The first gunshot Ellen Garrison ever heard wasn't in Afghanistan. It was in her father's backyard in Montana when she was 9, shooting tin cans off a fence. The last gunshot she heard was the one that tore through her shoulder at FOB Cobra, ending her military career and nearly her life. She never expected to hear another one in the quiet halls of Westlake High, but she always knew someone would try. Ellen adjusted her blue security uniform as she walked the empty corridor of Westlake High School at 6:15 a.m. Outside, the Pennsylvania. Autumn painted the trees in amber and rust, but inside, the fluorescent lights cast the same sterile glow they did every morning. She preferred arriving before anyone else, checking doors, testing locks, surveying the grounds. Westlake was her new battlefield, though no one knew it but her. Her routine never varied. South entrance, gymnasium, cafeteria, each classroom wing, then the administrative offices. She moved with quiet efficiency, her footsteps barely audible, on the polished linoleum. The maintenance staff had learned not to be startled when they turned a corner to find her there. Mr. Jenkins called her the ghost, behind her back. She'd heard him once but never acknowledged it. She preferred being a ghost. Ghosts were watchful. Ghosts were vigilant. Ghosts saw everything but remained unseen. Principal Davidson had once attempted small talk in her first month, asking about her background. "Security work?" he'd asked hopefully. "Something like that," she'd replied, and he never asked again. By 7:30, the first teachers arrived, nodding perfunctorily as they passed. Ellen returned each greeting with the same tight nod, professional, distant, forgettable, just as she'd intended. At the morning security checkpoint, she watched the students file in, faces still puffy with sleep, shoulders weighed down by backpacks and adolescent drama. She knew 213 names out of the 347 students, memorized from ID cards and attendance sheets. She recognized patterns: who arrived early, who rushed in late, who walked alone, who traveled in packs. She knew which kids needed watching and which ones needed protecting, often from themselves. "Shoelace," she said quietly as Tyler Mendez passed through the metal detector. He looked down, surprised, then bent to tie it. A small nod of thanks. Ellen had already moved on. Nobody looked at her face for more than a second. That was how she wanted it. The uniform was what they saw. The authority, not the person. Certainly, not the decorated captain who'd once commanded a specialized medical extraction team. Not the woman who'd carried wounded soldiers through gunfire. Not the officer who'd received 3 commendations before disappearing from military records. Just Mrs. Garrison, the school security guard who never smiled. "I swear she sleeps standing up in that security office," Bree Matthews whispered to her friend Alyssa as they pulled books from their lockers. "Like vampire style or something." Alyssa giggled. "My brother had her last year. Said she caught him trying to sneak out during assembly by just appearing behind him. Didn't say anything, just pointed back to the auditorium." "Have you ever actually heard her speak?" Bree asked, closing her locker. "Like full sentences?" "No way. My dad thinks she's ex-military or something. He said she has that look." "What look?" "You know, like she's always scanning for threats. My dad did 2 tours in Iraq, says he can spot it." The warning bell rang, and students began hurrying to first period. As they turned the corner, a freshman with his eyes glued to his phone collided, directly with Mrs. Garrison, sending her coffee tumbling from her hand. The cup never hit the ground. In one fluid motion that seemed impossibly fast for someone her age, Mrs. Garrison's hand shot out and caught the falling cup mid-air, barely, spilling a drop. The freshman stood frozen, eyes wide with fear. The hallway fell silent. "Sorry," the boy squeaked. Mrs. Garrison regarded him with those unreadable gray eyes. "Pay attention to your surroundings," she said quietly, her voice carrying in the sudden silence. Then she continued her patrol as if nothing had happened. "Holy shit," Bree whispered as they hurried to class. "Did you see how fast she moved?" But Alyssa was staring at something else. "Did you see her wrist when her sleeve pulled up? That was a serious scar." In the teacher's lounge, conversation briefly turned to the school's most enigmatic employee. Tried to invite her to the staff holiday party again, said Ms. Reynolds, the English teacher. Same response as last year. Thank you, but I have plans. No elaboration. She turned down hall monitor duty during prom, added Mr. Delaney, the vice principal. First time she's ever refused an assignment. Wonder what that was about. 2. Many exits to watch at once, said Ms. Chen from the math department. I heard her tell Davidson that the setup was tactically unsound. Who talks like that? Someone who takes school security way too seriously, Delaney replied. I mean, this is Westlake, not Kabul. What does she think is going to happen? None of them noticed Ellen passing by the half-open door, catching every word. She'd learned long ago that being underestimated was an advantage. Let them think she was paranoid. Let them think she was cold. What mattered was being ready for what they couldn't imagine. In her small office, a converted storage room near the main entrance, Ellen unlocked her metal desk drawer and checked the contents for the third time that day. A neat roll of gauze, 2 compression bandages, a tourniquet, trauma shears, quick clot packets, a small flashlight, items that reminded her of another life, arranged with military precision. Beside them lay a worn metal identification tag, the letters partially obscured by years of handling. She never wore it anymore, but she couldn't bring herself to leave it behind. Some ghost followed you no matter how far you ran. Her radio crackled to life. Routine check all zones, said the automated system. Zone 1, clear, she responded, automatically. Zone 2 clear, came the voice of the part-time security guard who handled the athletic fields. Ellen put away the medical supplies and resumed her patrol. 5 more hours until dismissal. 5 more hours of vigilance that most days led to nothing, just the way she liked it. Thursday afternoons were always the hardest. Something about the proximity to the weekend made students restless, teachers distracted. Ellen felt it too, a subtle shift in the atmosphere, an uptick in minor infractions. She'd written 3 reports already, a bathroom vandalism, an attempted vape in the science wing, a verbal altercation in the cafeteria. She was logging the incidents when her radio came to life again. Mrs. Garrison, said the front desk administrator, her voice oddly tight. Can you check the south entrance? Door alarm was triggered. Ellen's body tensed before her mind had even processed the words. South entrance, the service corridor leading from the back parking lot. Rarely used except by maintenance. No deliveries scheduled today. Copy, she replied, already moving. She walked briskly down the main hallway, past classrooms filled with students oblivious to the sudden acceleration of her pulse. The familiar weight of alertness settled over her, the mental clarity she hadn't needed to summon in years. At the junction leading to the administrative wing, she made a quick detour to her office. The security monitor showed a grainy image of the south entrance, a man in a long coat standing just inside the doorway, looking down at something in his hands. A visitor badge? No. He wasn't heading toward the front desk, and his posture was wrong. Too rigid, too deliberate. An oversized backpack hung awkwardly from one shoulder. Ellen reached into her desk drawer, past the medical supplies, to the false bottom she'd installed her first week. Inside was a slim case containing non-lethal security equipment she'd privately purchased. Military-grade pepper spray, zip tie restraints, a tactical flashlight with a strobe setting capable of momentary disorientation. Nothing that would raise eyebrows if discovered, but in practiced hands enough to control a situation. She fastened the equipment to her belt under her uniform jacket and radioed back. Visual confirmation of unauthorized entry. Male subject, approximately 40-45, dark coat, large backpack, proceeding to intercept. Should I call the police? Asked the administrator. Ellen paused for a fraction of a second. False alarm? Possibly. Overreaction? Maybe. But the way he'd bypassed security protocols, the unnatural tension in his stance? Not yet. Stand by. Lock down Wing C as precaution. Wing C, where the freshmen were having study hall, the farthest point from the south entrance. If she was wrong, it would be a minor disruption. If she was right, Ellen moved silently toward the south corridor, cutting through the empty band room to approach from an unexpected angle. Through the window in the door, she caught another glimpse of the man. He was studying a piece of paper now, a map of some kind, and reaching into his backpack. Her training took over. She texted a pre-written code to Principal Davidson. 1. They'd established for emergencies, and then silenced her radio. No distractions now. Surveillance first. Assess, then engage. The man was moving toward the main hallway, his gait unnaturally stiff, eyes darting. Not the behavior of a parent or visitor. Ellen slipped behind him, keeping to the shadows of the poorly lit service corridor. When he paused at the intersection leading to the main hall, she made her decision. School security, she said firmly, her voice carrying the unmistakable tone of command. Put down your backpack and identify yourself. The man froze, then turned, slowly. His eyes widened when he saw only a middle-aged woman in a security uniform. The momentary relief in his expression told Ellen everything she needed to know. He bolted. Ellen was after him in an instant, moving with a speed that would have shocked anyone who knew her only as the taciturn security guard. The man was heading not toward the exit but deeper into the school, toward the cafeteria where lunch period was just beginning. She cut through a classroom, startling a teacher mid-lecture, and emerged in the hallway ahead of him. The man skidded, to a stop reaching into his coat. Ellen didn't hesitate. The tactical flashlight came out first. 3 rapid strobe bursts directly into his eyes, temporary sensory overload. As he flinched, she closed the distance, one hand striking precisely at the bundle of nerves in his wrist. Whatever he'd been reaching for clattered to the floor, a handgun just as she'd feared. The man recovered quickly, swinging wildly with his other arm, strong but untrained. Ellen sidestepped easily, years of combat training flowing back into her muscles. She caught his arm, using his own momentum to spin him off balance, and drove her knee into the side of his leg, not to injure, but to buckle his stance. He went down hard. Ellen was on him immediately, pulling his arms behind his back with practiced efficiency and securing them with zip ties. The entire takedown had lasted less than 15 seconds. Only then did she notice the gathering crowd, students and teachers, drawn by the commotion, staring in disbelief at the school security guard kneeling calmly on the back of a subdued attacker, the weapon safely kicked aside. "Someone call 911, she said quietly, "and clear this hallway, now." Principal Davidson paced the conference room, occasionally glancing through the window at the chaos outside. 3 police cars, an ambulance, and a growing cluster of news vans filled the parking lot. Inside, officers were still cataloging evidence from the gunman's backpack. A semi-automatic pistol, additional ammunition, crude diagrams of the school's layout with the cafeteria circled in red. "They're saying you saved dozens of lives," Davidson said, his voice still shaky. "If he'd reached the cafeteria..." Ellen sat rigid in her chair, her uniform still immaculate despite the struggle. The only evidence of the confrontation was a small tear on her sleeve and the controlled rhythm of her breathing. The same breathing techniques she'd once taught her medical team to use during extraction under fire. "I was doing my job," she said simply. "Your job is to check hall passes and watch for truants," Davidson said. Not this." He gestured helplessly toward the window. "The officers said you disabled him like a trained professional." Ellen said nothing. A knock at the door interrupted them. A police officer entered, followed by an older man in a suit who carried himself with unmistakable military bearing. "Principal Davidson? I'm Lieutenant Colonel Matthews, Pennsylvania State Police. Mind if we have a word with Mrs. Garrison?" Davidson nodded and excused himself. The moment the door closed, the officer's demeanor changed. "Captain Garrison," he said quietly. "I thought you looked familiar from the security footage. 10th Mountain, Division FOB Cobra, Medical Extraction Specialist." He paused. "You disappeared after the ambush in 2009. Ellen's face remained impassive. "I was honorably discharged, with 3 commendations for valor and a classified service record." The officer studied her closely. You've been off the grid for 14 years. I never went off any grid, I just came home. To work as a high school security guard. With your background? Ellen finally met his gaze. What exactly do you want from me, Lieutenant Colonel? Just to understand. The shooter had military training, dishonorable discharge from the Marines 3 years ago, history of threats against schools. Yet you took him down without a weapon, without backup, without so much as raising your voice. He leaned forward. Why here, Captain? Why not federal security, private sector, something that uses your skills? Ellen looked out the window at the school grounds, at the students being reunited with frightened parents. Because this is where I'm needed, she said simply. Places like this, they have guards but no security. They have drills but no preparation. They have policies but no protection. She touched the old scar on her wrist unconsciously. After Cobra, after losing my team, I needed somewhere quiet, somewhere I could still serve a purpose. Before Matthews could respond, the door burst open and a teenage girl rushed in, ignoring the protests of the officer outside. Mrs. Garrison. It was Bree Matthews, eyes red from crying. They're saying you saved us, that you fought him, that you're some kind of soldier? Ellen stood slowly. Miss Matthews, you shouldn't be in here. Is it true? Bree demanded. All this time you were, what? Special forces or something? Medical extraction team, Ellen corrected quietly. We got the wounded out. Bree stared at her. The aloof security guard who'd scared freshmen with her stern silence, now revealed as something else entirely. I don't understand. Why didn't you ever tell anyone? Why did you let us all think you were just... Just what? Ellen asked. Just mean, Bree finished lamely. Scary, like you hated being here. For the first time in her tenure at Westlake High, Ellen Garrison smiled, a small, sad curve of the lips that transformed her severe face. I never hated being here, she said gently. I was watching over you, all of you. The following Monday, Ellen arrived at her usual time, 6:15 a.m., half expecting to find the locks changed. Surely after the revelations, after the media circus of the weekend, decorated veteran prevents school shooting had made national headlines, the school board would decide she was too much of a liability. Her key still worked. The halls were still empty. Her routine remained unchanged. South entrance, gymnasium, cafeteria, each classroom wing. Then the administrative offices. The familiar pattern soothed her. Only when she reached the main entrance did she notice something different. The bare wall beside her tiny office, usually empty except for the fire evacuation plan, was now covered with a massive collage of handwritten notes, photographs, and drawings. Our guardian angel. Thank you for protecting us. The real Mrs. G. Hero in disguise. In the center was a photocopy of a military photograph someone had found online. Ellen in combat fatigues in Afghanistan, younger, standing with her medical team, actually smiling. Beside it was a newer photo, taken without her knowledge, showing her at her post by the main entrance, watchful and alert in her blue security uniform. Ellen stared at the display, a lump forming in her throat. For years she'd worked to be invisible, to be forgotten, to leave behind the pain of what she'd lost. Yet here was her past and present side by side, seen and acknowledged by those she'd silently protected. We took a vote, said a voice behind her. Ellen turned to find Principal Davidson and a group of students, including Bry, standing awkwardly in the hall. A vote? Ellen echoed. On what to call you, Davidson explained, looking both intimidated and proud. The board wanted to promote you to head of security, but the students had other ideas. Bree stepped forward, holding a new security badge. Instead of security officer, it read Guardian. We thought it fit better, Bree said, offering the badge. If that's okay? Ellen took the badge, turning it over in her calloused hands. For 14 years she'd been running from who she was, what she'd seen, what she'd lost. She'd hidden in plain sight, finding purpose in anonymous vigilance. Her silence had been armor, her invisibility a shield. But shields worked both ways. They kept danger out, and connection too. "Thank you," Ellen said, her voice steady as she pinned on the new badge. "I'd be honored." As the first bell rang and students began filing in, Ellen took her position by the main entrance. But this time, as each student passed, she did something new. She looked them in the eye and smiled. For the first time in 14 years, Ellen Garrison wasn't a ghost anymore. And for the first time since FOB Cobra, that felt right. Nobody had known who she was. But now they did. And somehow that made her stronger.